we can't access that. Because the only time Nav builds that is when it runs a report in Nav. So therefore, when we're running Jet reports, it doesn't exist. Now, I don't come into that all that often. And most of the time when people are like, well, I've got this report in Nav, I want to create it in Jet. You have it in Nav, why do you want to create it in Jet? You can just create the report and export it. So most of the time, that isn't an issue. But the problem we're going to run into is when we build these reports, oftentimes we're not just going to pull from one table, right? Reports are not that easy. Very rarely. Sometimes it happens. And so we need to be able to select the correct tables and be able to determine, okay, as we build this report, I need to pull from this table, and this table, and this table, and this table. Right? And that's why it's important to note kind of the structure. I've got my master table and a transactional level detail level. Right? My customer and my customer ledger entry. My vendor ledger entry. And it goes together with those documents. Sales header, sales line. Sales credit memo header, sales credit memo line. That header is considered the master table, and the line is that transactional table. Right? Here are the transactions associated with this document. So we have those various options available to us. Nav has a lot more. I can go hunting through the browser, but I might spend more time looking through there than I need to. If I can just go to Nav and find out where it is, that's going to be the quickest and fastest way. You also have access, possibly, to the zoom function, which is that Alt F1, or control function Alt F1. Contort your keys. Right? Tell me about this page. So let's talk about our tables and selections. On page 227, there's a way that we're going to go through and structure how we're going to organize this on our mockup. There's three different ways. I can do it right on the mockup. There was one of our mockups. So I'm going to go back to it. There we go. Where they actually put the item number, that's my field. I need to pull this from my item table. This is a location code. Warehouse is actually a location code. They're actually just noting it on it. That's one way you can go about doing that if that works for you. Or you might come in here and say, okay, from the warehouse, I'm going to pull from this table, and it's this field. Item is this table in this field. Quantity is this table in this field. The problem with that is you have to start pulling from multiple tables. It's a little complicated. Another way is to create a list about halfway down. Create a list of all the fields you'll use from each table you've identified. To me, I actually prefer this method over the create a table version. But let's say, hey, for my customer table, I need to get the name, the number, the phone number, the salesperson code. Those are all fields I need. In the customer ledger entry table, I need that customer number, that document number, that posting date, and that amount. Now, one thing to note is when you're pulling from multiple tables, there has to be some sort of connection between them. Right? I can't just randomly say, I'm going to pull information from this table and this table. Typically, that's not going to work. I can't say, I'm going to pull my account number from, well, this is a bad example because there's nothing up here that I wouldn't connect together. But I wouldn't say, well, here's all my customers, and then try and link my vendor table to it because there's no correlation between my customers and my vendors. So what I need to do is say, okay, well, I can pull this account number from my GL account table. If I need to get that name for the GL account, I have to go to that master table. That's the only place that GL account name is located, or description, whatever it is. So I know for sure I have to go to my GL account table. But to get that posting date, description, amount, user ID, I'm not going to find that in that master table. Those are transactions that occurred for that GL account. So I need to go to a different table, my GL entry table. How are those two tables connected? By the account number. So this account number, we're going to note, okay, well, I need to pull it from my GL account table and my GL entry table. And in one, it's number. In my master table, it's just NO period. In my transactional level one, it's GL account number NO period. Right. And you're going to find that's pretty common. In your master tables, customer number, vendor number, GL account number are all going to be NO period. Your transactional level ones, that's when you start having to specify customer number, GL account number, vendor number. The reason for that is because you have a lot of different numbers in that table. Document number, entry number, item number, right? In those transactional ones, you can't just put number and assume what it is. Although, to be honest, in those sales line ones, just a hint for you all, number in a sales line, credit memo line, that's actually item number, which is so annoying. Because you would think number would be maybe the line number, or entry number. Nope, it's item number. But you'll kind of learn these little quirks as you go through. Okay. So in my little table, I'm actually doing one of the examples here. We would have to say, okay, the posting date, description, amount, user ID, those all come from the GL account table. And they're called posting date, description, amount, user ID. So let's look at Katie's marketing report real quick. It's on page 229. We've got our mock-up where we need to get the customer number, customer name, contact person, phone number, address, quantity purchased. I know I want my filters to be a purchase date and the item number. We're making this our hard-coded bicycle report. And so I've created this table. My column names are customer number, customer name, contact person, phone number. These all match the columns in my mock-up. Well, I'm going to start and say, okay, my customer number. Where am I going to pull that from? Where would I start typically?
With the header?
Well, that's a good point. Okay, and here's where I was going to say this comes into when you create your reports, pull from the correct spot, right? Let's say I go for my customer number, I go straight to my customer table, right? I know my customer number is in there for sure. It's got to be. But if I say, okay, give me a list of all my customer numbers, it's going to pull every single customer number that I have, regardless of whether they purchase something from me. Now, I want to say, I only want to see the customers who actually purchased something from me, that actually purchased a bicycle. So in that case, I would go to a different table. I want to know customers who purchased something from me. How do I get to that information? I'm going to go to a transactional level table and look through those transactions and find the customers that actually exist in there. If they don't exist in that table, they didn't buy anything from us, right, of that specific item. So in this instance, we're going to go to the item ledger entry table. And here's something fun. In the item ledger entry table, it tracks movement of items for both vendors and customers. So in that table, we get the customer number. It's called source number. It trips everybody up. Anytime you're dealing with that item table or item ledger entry table, everybody's always looking for customer number and vendor number, and they do not exist. It's a source number and a source type. Give me the source number is the customer or vendor number. Source type, I'm going to choose customer or vendor.
Are there any like locations out there, like with, I don't want to say nomenclature changes, but like common sense, like normally it's referred to as this, but it's referred to as here, almost like a Cliff Notes version for common things in Nav? Or is it something you do that you just have to pick up as we go along?
You're going to pick it up as you go along, to be honest. For the most part, it keeps a very specific pattern. Certain tables are kind of quirky, like the item ledger entry table, because we're tracking movement of items regardless of who it's going to, whether it's going to coming from a vendor out to a customer. It tracks the movement of items, and in that case, they needed to have a way. They couldn't just say, "Well, give me the customer number," because sometimes that would be blank. Give me the vendor number. Sometimes that's going to be blank. So they created this source number. But typically, with your master tables, number, name. Those things refer to, if it's a customer table, that's customer number, customer name. Item table, item number, item name. When you get into the transactional, that's when you have to start specifying which number, which name. Okay. So we'll see that as we go through our examples. All right, so for our customer name, where would we go for that?
Customer table.
Yeah, we'd go to our customer table. And the field is going to be name. So we can do one of two things. I can go into Nav and look for it, or I can go into the browser and go into my customer table and just kind of scroll down here. At this point, I am after the actual field name or the field, what it's called. Because I want to be able to just type that in real quick. Now, right off the bat, we're going to two different tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, what ties those two tables together? Customer number. We've already got the customer number, so I'm going to go back to my customer number and add a second table and field. I'm going to add that customer table. I'm going to add the number, NO period. Because I'm going to need to pull that from two different tables now. One's going to be as a filter, one's not going to be.
So
This is, yeah, go ahead.
I go back to that customer number, there's already gonna be something in there. Am I gonna, is there an ad or what, how visually, how would that?
Well, here's, I'll just build my little table, kind of what we have here. So I've got my customer number. And I'm going to leave a space here for my customer name and contact. What else do we have? Phone, address. So this is my little table that I'm building right here. So we first said I need to go to my table field. I need to go to my item ledger entry. And in my item ledger entry, that customer number is source number, NO period. We then came to the customer name and said, well, the only place I can really get that customer name is from the customer table, that master table, and in there it's name. So now I say, okay, well, I have to go to two different tables. How are they tied together? Customer number, I've already found customer number. I'm going to go back and add customer number.
Why two different tables?
Because one,
You gotta link it somehow. So
Yeah.
that it
what I wanted
pulls
to,
out.
yeah, if I could technically say, okay, if I just wanted to list every customer, we're going to have to come back to this anyways. If I didn't start here and just said I want every single customer, chances are I would go to my customer table. Give me every customer number that exists. Then I could get the customer name from there. In fact, I can get the contact. I could certainly get that phone back to the customer table. Phone.
So if you use the other table, we wouldn't have a bunch of data with blanks.
We would at this point, yeah, if we just
Okay.
did, but the problem is all of a sudden, once we get to this quantity, the only way to get that quantity is to go to that transactional table, right? There's no way for me to know how many of this item did this customer purchase without going to the transaction table.
I see.
And so even still, we have to come and say, okay, well, I'm gonna go to my item ledger entry.
And that transaction table is probably only going to have that,
And this
Source
is quantity.
no other information.
And so right now, even if I did it, you know, I said, well, I'm going to list every customer. I started here to get that customer number. As soon as I hit this and say, oh, well, I have to go to another table, I have to find that link between my customer table and that item ledger entry table. And that's based off of my source number. So it's just a frame of reference for me. And a lot of times what I do is when I build this, we'll talk about our replicator and building our lists. But the one that I'm going to build my list off of, I come through and I'll make it bold, or maybe I'll make it red. So I know that's kind of like the key to my report. Right? This is the value that's going to drive my report.
Now, when you write the underneath the red line,
The customer number.
yeah, what you have to write it also?
It's good to just note so you know in the back of your mind.
No, but in the report, if we are writing the report, you don't need to add that line,
He hasn't shown us how
right?
to connect it yet.
It's-
This
yeah.
is just a,
What's going to happen is I'm going to build my report off of this value, but I need to link this customer table
Right, but
to
right,
that value.
line
And so
11 doesn't need to be there.
this is just for my reference, just so I know when I build that filter, what field is it in that table? It's just a frame of reference. So again, if this way doesn't work for you, if you say, well, I already know that, just don't list it. Or italicize it, or do something to, this is why I build it with the bold red, saying this is what's gonna drive my report. And that way I know if I've got those multiple ones in there, it's just linking, it's like, this is the linking field for my filters. This is all very broad picture, and once we start building the reports, hopefully it'll start making a little bit more sense. So let's talk about Janice's commission report again. She's on page 230. And so let's put in my, let's see, salesperson code. In fact, I'm going to move this down so I have room for this. And what else do we have? My salesperson name, customer number, customer name, total transactions, and total commission. In fact, I think on this one we actually have to put the commission percent, so let's put that in there as well. Insert